Hey, it's Writers Row, where we talk about Twitter's writing community, writing, the creative side, and the business side. I am DC Wright-Hammer, a sci-fi thriller writer for the Between Two Minds series, and with me, as always, on the other side is
David Gane. I am part of Kunos and Gane, writing partners in crime. We write young adult murder mysteries and the Shepherd and Wolf murder mystery series.
Remember, we've been getting a lot of good feedback lately on some of the episodes we've published. So if you like what we're doing, make sure to like all our videos, subscribe. The more subscribers we get, the more we want to put out great content for you. And yeah, definitely give us comments on what you want to hear about. Share, retweet our videos. We appreciate all that. So we really appreciate it. It's been really awesome to see people reaching out.
How you doing, DC?
I am doing okay. Got a lot going on. Started a new job. It's good. I know what I'm doing, but it's just a lot of work. Um, yeah, just rolling into the summer. The kids are tenacious, and um, yeah, just life is getting in the way. I haven't done much writing. I did start reading your book, so I could be less of a jerk. I'm 60 some pages in, and it's really well paced, really interesting and exciting. I think it slots right into like that serial killer type genre. It actually has somewhat of a Dan Brown feel, and that's not an insult, I promise you. Very well paced. I don't know. I like it so far, so we'll see where
Awesome.
it goes.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah,
It's like, woof.
right.
Yeah, you always kind of worry
Um,
when somebody you know is reading your book a little bit, right?
right. Well, there's plenty of time for me to be disappointed, but no signs of that yet.
Okay, great.
How are you doing? You sound a little hoarse.
I am a little hoarse. I didn't actually sleep very much last night because my throat was bothering me. Woke up, I couldn't talk. I actually texted you. Actually, I held off on texting you to tell you this may not even happen for today, uh, to just see what was going to happen. And yeah, just lots of lemon and neocitrin and drugs. And I'm a little stoned probably right now, so we'll see how this show goes.
Going to
So
be a great show. Um, if David can push through with a throat problem, you all can watch this to the end. So
or at least see if I like pass out or fall off my
right,
chair, right? That
and,
would be the worthwhile thing.
right. And he asked me if he should blow his nose on camera before he was on camera, and I think he should. I think he should just play the trumpet. Uh,
I'm pretty shy about my blowing my nose, so I will see what happens.
all right. Um,
I'll work through it. What's this week about?
so
Or what's the show, today's
we've
show about?
been we were bantering about it, and we wanted to take a moment. I think something that every writer can relate to, author, whether they're indie or not. There's really an emotional and mental aspect to writing that doesn't often get talked about. Even on social media, you'll see people maybe, they'll disappear for a while, or they'll come back, or they'll start talking negatively and things like that. And so I thought we should take a show to talk about our emotional and mental journeys as writers, as published independent authors, and see where it takes us. I think, like I said, it's not talked about as much as I think it could be, and I want others to know. People have been watching us for learning about exclusive information we put out here, learning about things like PitMat or Indie April or the writing community, and I think I want to have more of a personal, sort of connection and let you know give a little. I think because I have a lot to share on the topic, and I think you probably have a lot to share on the topic. So that's kind of what I wanted to do this week.
Okay, sounds good. So do you want to start and tell me a bit about
Yeah,
your emotional and mental journey?
yeah. So I have been a writer for 4.5, almost 5 years. I was not a serious writer before that. I just kind of dabbled in a little bit of poetry here or there. A lot of my stuff was kind of dark. It's funny reading your book because like right out of high school or at the end of high school, I was writing a high school serial killer book. I got like 10,000 words in, and I thought I was hot shit. That's the first curse word of this episode.
And it's yours.
And right. And I wrote that, and that computer died. This was back when like there was no cloud storage. I didn't have a thumb drive, like I had floppies and all this stuff. So that story went bye-bye. And then I never really thought about writing. I watched a lot of like sci-fi movies and a lot of movies in general, and I thought I had an artistic eye for it. But it really didn't take hold of me until in 2014. And this is a story that I've told in several interviews, but I haven't gotten into a lot of detail about it. So I kind of wanted to open up on Writer's Row because I think it's important that, regardless of where we come from as writers, I think a lot of us put our heart and soul into it. And what are the motivations? Why do we do that? And so for me, in 2014, this was back then, I had started a new job. I was like hitting the gym, in good shape. I had a 1-year-old, almost, it was 18 months, I think. And life was pretty good, hitting some strides and all that. And so I wanted to challenge myself physically, so I chose to do one of those mud runs. It's one of these like obstacle courses in the middle of summer, and there's mud, there's like bales of hay you have to climb on, there's all kinds of different obstacles and whatnot. And I like the challenge. I like cool things like that. To say I've done it, to challenge myself, and so on. And so it was late July of 2014. I did this mud run, and I finished it. I finished in like an hour and 26 minutes, which sounds like a long time it was just a 5K. But with all the obstacles and everything, it just took a while. And then I was fine. I went into like rehab mode because you're bruised and you're scratched, and like they should really give like antibiotics at the end of that run because like you just are so scratched up and everything. Like it's kind of nuts. So I went into rehab mode and I was exercising, and then I got a little cramp in my calf, and that lasted for like a week. It was the weirdest thing. I thought I was like dehydrated or whatnot. And then like a week after that, I had rib pain, and it was really weird. And so I waited a few days, and I finally went to urgent care. I don't know how it works in Canada, but you have urgent care centers. And I'm like, hey, I have this rib pain. What do you think it is? They did a chest x-ray. Everything came back negative, and they sent me home. Oh, okay, it's nothing. And so I was like, okay, fine. I still had this rib pain. Whatever. I'm just going to go on with life. He said, come back in 2 weeks. So in 2 weeks, I came back, and I still had rib pain. And I'm like, all right, something's weird. Something weird is going on. And so they diagnosed me with like bronchitis, like inflammation of the lungs, although I didn't have an infection. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so then I go and they gave me antibiotics just in case, so I didn't get an infection. And I'm like, all right, something's still not right. And so it was like another week later, and I'm like realizing that I've had running a fever for like 4 weeks, and I had lost like 15 pounds because my body was just working overtime. And I finally went to the doctor and I said, something's got to give, doc. What is this? And it turned out that I had developed deep vein thrombosis in my leg, a blood clot. And that broke off and went into my lungs and like was basically trying to kill me. 1 in 3 people actually die. It's called pulmonary embolism. And I was shocked when finally the doctors figured it out. And I was just shocked, like, and he's like, you need to go to the emergency room right now. I'm like, uh-oh. And all this happened to me. And for like 3 or 4 months after that, I was just like, I survived. Luckily, it was, tiny little blood clots, and I could go on blood thinners for 6 months. It was just this freak accident. and it really changed me. And I look at the world a little differently. Like when you get that near to death, like we write about it sometimes in our books, like people die, people get close to death, dramatic and all that. But when it's you, like the existential crises, anything, negative in my life just kind of came flooding back. And I really needed some kind of outlet for this near death experience. And I just started typing. I pulled up a document and I had this idea, and I was thinking about this while I was sick, quote unquote. Um, my mind is still good, but my body is not. Can I get out of my body? Like, can I get my mind into a physically fit body? And that was really the thing that brought about my science fiction series, Between Two Minds, which is about just that. People getting out, downloading your minds and putting into a body. And I was working as a data migration specialist at the time. So my mind just melded my life into a ball and I put it out onto paper. Now, of course, it didn't start out that way. It started off as just vague little bits of pieces of a story. And eventually I threaded it together. And then I worked with an editor. And finally, took me 2.5, almost 3 years. It took me almost 3 years to actually finally hit publish. But that journey, like just the self doubt, the mental effort it took, because I didn't have writing community back then. I had an uncle who was self published, but he was not much help at the time, and I kind of wanted to pioneer it myself and do it myself. And so, that's sort of, this long story to start this show of, I think there's a bunch of writers out there who they might not have had a near death experience, but I think they've had a lifetime of experiences that probably led them to becoming a writer. And I think we should talk about it more. Of course, people can be as guarded as they want to be. People shouldn't feel like they have to open up if they don't want to. But I think there's some catharsis. I think there's some relief in letting people know, hey, we all come from different places and we can all use writing as a way to come together.
So I have a couple of questions now that you've kind of said that. What made you want to actually publish? Like, yes, it's you had it in you, you put it down on the page, but you also put some investment and financial investment into the edits, right? And then you put it on Kindle, correct? On Amazon originally. Yep. So what made you want to do that? Because to me, that's a whole different part of that story.
Yeah. And I think it was sort of my way of saying I'm still here.
Okay.
Like, that, there was an opportunity there or a time there where we weren't sure. Like, I wasn't sure. And even after I survived the situation, nothing was guaranteed. I mean, I was in a hospital room for like 38 hours, 40 hours or something, almost 2 days. So it wasn't a super long stay, but it was enough to I had never been in a hospital, like a stay at a hospital before. And so, a lot of things were at work in my mind. And I think I wanted to just tell the world, hey, I'm here. Hey, I've done something and you might like it. And so that rolls into its own, that's the next process of, oh no, I've done this. I've hit publish and now it's out there. But I'll stop there because I think that's kind of the way my mind wanted to work it out. I needed to have something very public to basically say, hey, I still exist. Hey, you know how like 99.9% of all people who've ever lived are not alive? Well, I'm not that yet. So.
Okay, and then I think a part of the whole emotional and mental journey that we go through is we put it out there, right? We hit publish, we put it on there, and then there's two things that happen. People read it or they don't. Or I guess also they read it, they don't like it, or they read it and don't say anything, all those kind of things. To me, that's the hardest part of that journey.
I think it's a new journey. I think,
It's a
yeah,
new journey. Okay.
if you look at a big scope, yeah, obviously it's part of a timeline.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a whole new ball game because, as we were talking about earlier in the show, and something I had posted on Twitter, there was another writer who was saying, "Do you ever just get like think that it's not worth it and don't want to do it anymore? Why is that?" That was kind of the question. And the analogy that quickly came to mind was that we plow fields. It feels like we plow whole fields and then we get like a pound of crops as a result. We do all this effort, all this work to have a professional brand, to put forth a good product, to do social media and all these other things we do, all this effort, and then we, for better or for worse, want to compare that to, well, what are the returns for all that, and what are the tangible returns, um, and how much money, after all the effort and
Yeah.
money that we put in, what do we get out of it? And you're lucky to be able to buy a good dinner some months. um, and then other months you might hit it big and like you have something happens, but then it ebbs and flows. And that's
Sorry, I had to do it, man.
uh, right. And so I think that ebbing and flowing, I think we have to ground ourselves because our emotions can follow that roller coaster, and that's exhausting. That's really tough.
Yes. And how do you manage that then? Like how do you, if we put in all that effort and all you get is that little bit of return, then what is the, do you have a version in your head of, okay, that's okay, I didn't need that because I got this thing out of it?
Um, Me personally, I think it goes back to, what is your definition or definitions of success as a writer? And I think you have to almost print that out and put it somewhere you can see it all the time, because that can get murky and blurry when you're 3 hours into fighting with your website to get it to do one little thing you want it to do, when you're 14 layers deep in Twitter and you say something wrong to somebody in a post and then everybody kind of like eggs in on you or whatever. When, all these different things, um, why are you doing it? What is it? Is it strict impulse? Is it, oh, is there the sunken cost fallacy of like, I've already put in this much time and effort. Do I have to just keep doing it? And I think for a lot of us, like, we feel like that. We feel like, um, I've already invested way too much in this. There's too many expectations. Another post I did on Twitter today was about how the larger audience you have, the more expectations are on you. Um, but I think it goes back to the definition of success that you have. And if that is to be a full-time writer, well, that's going to be frustrating for you until you achieve that or decide that that's not attainable for you. But if you have smaller goals that are achievable and you plug away at it, you just chug along, um, and you adjust, I think you can you can feel successful, even though you might not be making a lot of money, even though you might not sell a ton of books all the time. The good news is there's always tomorrow. The good news is that people who haven't heard of your book, it's new to them when they finally see it. Like, it's still new to them. They don't have all those reviews in mind. They might if they look them up on Amazon or on Goodreads. They don't have any association with it. They're new to you. They're new to your books and your brand. And that's an opportunity to start over. That's an opportunity for something new. And I think um, probably from my perspective, like when I first got on Twitter in July of last year and started really working at it, I had 11 reviews on my book. And I was just like, that's, 11 reviews actually sounds like a lot to some people too. That's the other side of it. But I
I was
knew
going to say that's pretty good.
right, I know. So so whatever, first author problems. Is that even I don't know. But
It is now.
right. First author problems. Hashtag first author problems. Um, but I knew that if my book was ever going to have mass appeal, I needed to get more reviews. So, it wasn't like I'm like, oh, let me get on Twitter and that's going to equal reviews. I knew there was going to be some work involved in it. But little did I know, pouring myself into writing community and doing things like the Indie Author Spotlight, which I haven't picked up again for the summer. I'm going to do it eventually, but it's just, so many things right now. Doing Writers Row, really being open and honest and genuine with the writing community, presenting myself. It's been ridiculous, like the perception, the reception and the perception that we've gotten. And people sort of gravitate towards people like that. They want to see, okay, so I kind of know DC, but what's in his books? So they start to read it and review. I am trying to get better at reading and reviewing. I have reviewed five or six indie author books already this year.
Nice.
I want to get to 12 by the end of the year at least, if not more. Obviously, I owe yours a read and review, and then I'm going to move on to some of the heavy hitters I've been putting off. But that's it. You make a community out of it, and we sort of uplift each other. And so I'm still blown away. Every read and review I get is always going to be cool to me. And from book one, I'm at 36 reviews on Amazon, which is like, I never thought I would get there. They started rolling in April and May, and it humbles me that people would do that, and it makes me hungry to get more, and then it makes me stop mentally and think the way to continue doing this is what I've been doing, is to reinvest more time and effort in the writing community, to never take anything for granted. I mentioned today I have 12K followers. I wouldn't have that without writing community. I wouldn't have that without people taking interest in me, and so on and so forth. I don't have like any formula for it. It's just every interaction I try to take seriously and then joke a lot about it and joke about everything and joke about life. Because if I didn't joke, I would go mental, which is appropriate for the show. So there you go. I'm going to take a drink and a break real quick.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that's what?
Well, I was going to say, like, I've been doing all the talking. I think you should. I know you're hoarse, but I'd like to hear some of your experience and what you think.
When we first kind of talked about it, about the emotional and mental, kind of what's going in our head and how we're feeling and everything like that, it's been so long that I actually don't know where I'm actually kind of leveled off, I find. Early on, like I said in an earlier show, I wasn't writing for a long time. Then I finally got writing. I worked with a writing partner. We did a lot of scripts. Then we shifted into novels because the industry was gone, and to me, story is story. So I just pivot always, and I don't worry about that kind of stuff because I always think of I think it's Robert Rodriguez, guy who did El Mariachi and all the Spy Kid films. And I don't know why that's the first one that comes to mind, but the El Mariachi series is really good because he always said, if you don't know the story, when he made that film, it was made for like $8,000 or something. And the money he got to make it was because he was signing up to have experiments done on him. He would do drugs and stuff like that, and they would pay him. So he used that money and the time to write the script and then go make the movie. super low budget. Um, it ended up getting sold. He got other opportunities, and he said that even if tomorrow that opportunity to make a big Hollywood budget film is gone, he'd just go back to the way he first started, right? Which was, instead of getting a big 35 millimeter camera, he would go to a Super 8 or whatever. And if he couldn't do that, he would use a VHS or whatever it was back in the time, because that was a while ago. And I always think about that. It's like, whatever path we take, I'm still going to tell stories in some form or another. So I'm just going to keep on working at that. But of course, with the time and the investment that I put into it, I'd like to see some returns. Because Ange and I treat Kunos and Gane as a business, right. And so we put an investment into that. So we want to see returns on that investment, even if it's just to come to like not be in the red all the time on it, right? So that I think has been always my biggest concern over the past couple of years, where the most of the mental energy and emotional energy goes into. There's always the times where it's like, how do you work with another person and work together and find that, where a lot of extra cycles are spun to sort that out.
Right.
But and then just the stress of figuring out story and being on the same page on the story and stuff like that. But yeah, that to me is the biggest thing that I'm always, even like when I first got onto Twitter, that was always the question I was asking everyone, was like, okay, so have you figured out how to make money off of these things, right? And it, like, I'm never upset. I don't need to be a millionaire or anything like that off this. I don't have those kind of expectations, but I'd like to find some balance. And it's actually in this past couple of months that I finally have kind of figured out, I think, how to approach that and find that kind of balance, and we're doing things that are moving us in the right direction. So that to me is kind of the biggest thing that I end up mentally and emotionally spend the most amount of time on. So
yeah, I think it's the whole business side. So like you said, after you hit that publish button, that whole roller coaster is just it is. Especially if you think you got a good product, then you're like, okay, the only thing stopping me is getting it into people's hands. Okay, how do I do that affordably? How do I do that without working myself to death? How do I do that? And so I think that's the question. That is the whatever $60,000 question that we all have to figure out. And I think as we learn these things, you said you're figuring some things out. I think sharing them in some form or fashion that's consumable for people, helping, whatever it is, if it's future shows, if it's a blog post, if it's something like that, I think we should share, because I think independent, I've said this on other shows, does not mean alone. And I know that while I'm doing okay, I suppose, as an indie author, if my rise to stardom begins to happen ever, people are coming with me. I'm not doing this alone, because I'm going to need, real, genuine people if that ever happens. And I'm going to need, to be able to make recommendations of other people, like who are the quality other independent authors if I'm hitting it big, and who am I going to still, handle that if there is success in the future. Who knows? I could do this for another 2 years, 3 years, and maybe that's it. That might be the end of it. That's something we all have to kind of think about. But also be prepared and optimistic. If things do go well, how are you going to handle it? What's your plan? And so I think that's something to think about as well. So
That's one of those things that I think is always an interesting question, because there's been a couple of times when I'll go out in public and somebody will say, "Oh, hey, David," and I have no clue who they are.
yep,
And it's because of something to do with writing, whether, when we get nominated, somebody recognizes us from that, or even people you talk to on Twitter and then you meet them in the real world and say, "Oh, yeah, okay."
right.
Um, uh, and yeah, when your idea of who you are is now much more open and out there, and you're like, "Oh,
Right.
wait, people are saying things about me and making assumptions about me that I'm not really aware of." Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. As you know, I overthink those things a little bit.
I think we all do, whether we share it or not.
Yes.
Um,
So, one other thought I had though, and um, we've talked a bit about the money aspect, but I also think one of the things that does definitely help give you stepping stones to get across the big river, across the big lake, right? Of fear and stuff like that, is that like having writing those reviews given to you. It's like, oh, somebody liked this book, or even engaged with it. Because I one thing I've always said is I don't really need a 5-star review. If somebody doesn't like it, wants to give a 1 or a 2 or whatever, I'm cool with that. Because if they didn't like it, but it's their kind of story, then yeah, I want to hear that kind of feedback. Often we'll read a review and be like, okay, yeah, you know what? We're thankful for the review, but there's a Seth Godin line, which is he didn't get the joke, right? And
right.
I think about that. I'm like, okay, yeah, thank you for reading it, but I don't think this was the book for you, right?
Sure.
Um, and then it's not a competition, but having those nominations for awards and stuff like that is actually for us one of those things that always feels good as well.
For sure.
It's just like, oh, like we got into into that group of people, and even with our last one, local one that we got nominated for, just being in that group of people felt fantastic to me. And the other thing that kind of was great that I got out of it was I got to talk to those people and ask them questions and meet them and find out how generous they are as well. So yeah, that's one of those other parts of the journey that I always find for the mental and emotional health is is really wonderful. So
Yep. It's probably a good segue into shout outs, if people are still watching this. So do you want
have
to
we
give
gone
your,
that long?
yeah, it's a long episode already. So
Oh, okay. All right.
you go ahead with your shout outs real quick, and then I'll circle back.
Okay. The so I we keep on bringing on books and my shirts and all kinds of stuff. So I wanted to change it up a little bit. I wanted to shout out Matt's Uniweb interview show, which you're gonna put the link down below. It's he does author interviews, and you've been a part of it. I've been a part of it, correct?
Oh yeah.
Um, he puts out an incredible amount of content, and you know what, like I know how much you put into the show to get it out there, and I know he does a lot of editing, much more editing. So
Right.
I gotta give him a call out for that. And then Rebecca has the indieconnectbooks.com, which of course we're going to link down below.
Yep.
And she just highlights a lot of authors of all different genres, which is fantastic, and gives them links to all of that. So if you're looking for indie books, definitely going there, looking through it and discovering stuff is really fantastic. So
And I'll add that those books are vetted. So
yes.
not just indie books. If you're looking for good books that also happen to be independently written, take a look at that. So big fan of Indie Connect. I am going to give a shout out to Tory Hunter and her critique Corral and editing in, as she calls it on her website. This is probably going to go live after Pit Mad, definitely after she does query letter critiques and Twitter pitch critiques. So this is going to go live after that, but she's still going to offer those services. Synopsis, if you want help with your synopsis for your book, she helps with that. Manuscript critique, she does editing and proofreading, and she has packages as well. She's also the co-author for The Last Letter, which is the book she's writing with WB. We had that exclusive reveal a couple of episodes ago. And so very neat. I know we all look for different people to offer us services, and I haven't used Tory specifically, but I've seen that it's come highly recommended. So definitely check that out.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Also, if you know of people that have these kind of services, we always like hearing about them as well. So
put it in the comments down below. Anybody you've used for editing or critiques or anything like that, we will spread the word.
Awesome. Well, thank you, DC.
Thank you, David, when you're sick, coming out and listening to me chat. Really appreciate it, and we appreciate everybody who's stayed this long on the episode.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.